There's a person living in your head who doesn't exist. Not like a voice, not a hallucination, just a model, a working copy of someone you know, built from every conversation, every reaction, every weird little habit you've ever noticed about them. Your brain built it without asking you, and it's been running ever since. Here's the part that got me. When that person dies, the model doesn't. Your brain keeps expecting them, keeps running the simulation for months, sometimes years. That's not a metaphor for grief. That's literally what's happening in your brain when you lose someone. And once I learned that, I couldn't stop pulling on this thread. So here's what I kept coming back to. Your brain is not reacting to the world like we all kind of assume it is. Something happens, your brain picks it up, you respond. That's the intuition, right? But that's actually completely backwards. Your brain is guessing constantly about everything. What you're about to see, what someone is about to say, whether the floor is going to hold you when you take your next step. It sends a prediction downstream first, and then it checks incoming signals to see if it was right. Neuroscientists call this predictive coding. A philosopher named Andy Clark wrote a whole book about it called Surfing Uncertainty, and the core idea is almost crazy simple. Your brain generates a model of the world, a working simulation of what's out there, and then it uses that simulation to predict what's coming. That actual sensory stuff, what your eyes see, what your ears hear, and that only gets through the gaps, the places where reality surprised the prediction. Everything else, your brain already filled in. Think about how you reach for things without really looking, or how you can follow a conversation in a loud restaurant, even though you're only actually catching half the words. Or, and this is the one that kind of got me, how you can finish someone's sentence and be exactly right. That's not a party trick. That's your brain running the simulation, and the simulation just won. It was right. Now, here's where it gets really strange. Because your brain does all of this for the physical world, the floor, the door handle, the next word someone's going to say, but it doesn't stop there. It does the exact same thing for people. There's a concept in cognitive science called simulation theory. The basic version of it is this. When you're trying to figure out what another person is thinking, what they're feeling, and what they're about to do, your brain doesn't run some abstract algorithm. It simulates them. It uses itself as the model. It puts their situation on like a coat and runs a little internal test. If I were them, what would I want? What would scare me? What would I say next? Philosopher and cognitive scientist Alvin Goldman spent decades working on this. His book, Simulating Minds, laid out the case that this kind of mental simulation is the core of how we understand other people at all. And the more you think about it, the more obvious it becomes that we're doing this all the time. Before a hard conversation, you already played it out. Before you walked into a room full of people you know, your brain already simulated half a dozen interactions with them. Before you sent that text you weren't sure about, you ran every version of how it might land. That's not anxiety. Well, sometimes it's anxiety, but underneath it, it's actually your brain doing its job, building and running working models of the people in your life. Think about someone you've known for a long time, a parent, an old friend, someone you've had 1,000 conversations with. Somewhere in your brain, there is a model of that person that knows how they talk, what makes them laugh, and what they do when they're uncomfortable, which topics they steer around, and how they sound when they're lying. When you're about to see them, before you're even in the same room, your brain is already running the simulation, already predicting, already adjusting your approach based on how the model says they'll react. This is why some people just seem to read the room well. They're not magic. They're not more empathetic by nature. They're just updating the simulations faster and more honestly than everyone else. They notice when reality doesn't match the prediction, and they revise it. Where most of us double down on the old model, we insist we know how someone is or who they've always been, how they always act. The people who are actually good at understanding other people are the ones who treat the simulation like a rough draft, and it's always open for edits. So what happens when the simulation is wrong? Not just slightly wrong, not like you misread the tone of a text kind of wrong. I mean the kind of wrong that breaks a relationship in half. You've probably been here. You had someone completely figured out. You knew how they thought, you knew how they'd react, and then one day they just didn't. And you realized you hadn't been seeing them. You've been seeing your model of them, which is not the same thing. The model is built from every interaction you've had, every pattern you've noticed, every time they confirm what you'd already expected. But people change. People grow or shrink or shift in ways that don't announce themselves. And you're not just updating the simulation. If you're just running the old version, that's all you're doing. You will keep predicting wrong. You'll keep misreading. You'll keep having the same argument that was never really about what it seemed to be about. A lot of conflict isn't actually about the other person. It's about the delta, the gap between who your model says they are and who they actually are right now. And here's the part I couldn't stop thinking about with this. What happens to the simulation when the person dies? A neuroscientist named Mary Frances O'Connor has spent more than 20 years studying exactly this. She ran some of the first brain imaging studies ever done on people who were actively grieving, and what she found changed how I think about what loss actually is. When you lose someone, the simulation doesn't stop. Your brain keeps running it. O'Connor described it this way in her book, The Grieving Brain. The brain devoted years to building a map of that person, where they are, how to find them, and what to expect from them. And death doesn't update the map. Not right away, not automatically. Your brain still expects them. It still generates predictions about them, still, at some level, anticipates a response. This is why bereaved people will pick up the phone to call someone who has been dead for a year, why they'll go to say something and turn to a space that's been empty for months, why certain places, certain smells, certain songs can hit so hard so suddenly. Because the brain encountered something that matched the old prediction, and the simulation briefly came back online. O'Connor calls this the gone but also everlasting problem. The brain holds two things at once that contradict each other: the knowledge that they're gone and the deep wired-in prediction that they're still out there somewhere. And grieving, the actual process of it, is the slow, effortful, nonlinear work of updating the model. Not erasing it, not forgetting, just teaching the brain a new version of reality, one absence at a time. She says something in the book that I keep coming back to, that grief is a form of learning, and learning takes time. And the brain, even a brain that knows someone is gone, is doing its best to catch up. There's something almost unbearable about that. The idea that your brain is not being dramatic, it's not failing to cope, it's just still running the program, still looking for a signal that isn't going to come. And that is not a flaw in how the brain works. It is exactly how it was built to work. The same system that helps you navigate every relationship you have, the same simulation engine that lets you understand other people at all, is the thing that makes loss so hard to figure out. The simulation was doing its job. It just had no protocol for this. So we all carry this whole private world of simulations running in the background all the time of every person who has ever mattered to us. Some of those models are current, some of them are 20 years out of date, and some of them are still running for people who aren't even here anymore. And whether your relationships work, whether you actually see the people you think you know, might come down to something as simple as this. Are you willing to update the simulation? I always wondered why losing someone hurts in that particular way, that specific ache. Now I think I know. It's not just that they're gone. It's that some part of your brain is still looking. That's a video for another day. If this one got you thinking, the links to Mary Frances O'Connor's work and the research on predictive coding are in the description, and I want to know whose simulation in your head is the most accurate, and who are you probably still running the old version of? I'm genuinely curious. I'll see you next time.